Probably now.
Oh, somebody's got a kiddo.
Am I ready to share?
Yes, please.
We are live.
Hi, Jane. Hi, Marianne. Hi, Jeff.
Can I be co-host or can I yell
Hello.
out?
Hello.
I think Jimena needs to be made co-host. So how is everybody feeling today?
Not so
How are
bad.
you,
Anupa?
So for that response, we have something similar to your response happening next week. So stay tuned for that.
Hi,
Anupa,
Ophri.
how are you?
Great. I just got vaccinated today, so I'm a bit woozy. So please forgive me.
Wow, your first one?
Yes, it's my first one.
Wow, you're lucky.
Yeah, I don't know about luck because people are saying it's all glucose, but I think we have other more interesting stuff to get into now once Himena shares the screen. This is just, yes. So we're just going to start with some few particulars for people who've not been here before and also people who've been. We're going to be streaming live. And if you'd like to be a part of our smiling faces and conversations, please keep your camera on. If not, still be there and it's okay for you to keep your camera off. We'd also be taking some screenshots and sharing on Instagram. So just to let you know. Yeah, and this is what happens on the Wednesday Web Jam. We're a platform where we explore, we create, we chat, we smile, we joke, and we have lovely people who help us do that. So today, let me start with my speaker. I'll tell you a little story of how I met him. So he was having his own jam, and I thought that there'd be a lot of people. It was the end of the day, and I thought that I would just melt away into the background. And to my horror, there were only like 5 to 10 people, and there were breakout rooms. It was almost 11:30 in the night, India time, and I was there, there I had to chat with people. And one of the breakout rooms was about cooking. So I said, okay, that's the easiest one. I'm going to go into that. I popped myself into that, and there was Adam, and we had the most amazing conversation about recipes, about how he was a chef back in the day, and more. So then I thought that why don't I invite Adam over to our Wednesday Web Jam and let him share his story about how he uses design within organizations and about the culture there. And yeah, over to you, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. And it's great to see a few people that I've met before, either at various conferences and so on, or in other activities like the Global Service Jam and so on. So thank you very much for having me. I'm going to talk to you today about a theme which I guess you've heard about, and I want to interact with you on this as well, which is quite close to my heart. And it's about the effect that organizations have on design, and also the effect that design has on the organizations where it's happening. Now, I'm just going to share my screen with you. Let's see if that works. And you should see a horrible yellow square, is that right? Can you give me a thumbs up if you see that so I know? That would be great.
Yes,
Thank you
we can
very
see
much.
it.
Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I'm also trying to arrange my screen so I can see as many of your own beautiful faces as possible. So patience with me for a second. Thank you for that one. So let's go straight into this one. Yeah. As I say, it's going to be a session where I ask you to do a few things as well as just listen. It's supposed to be a jam after all, though I think we use the word jam slightly differently, which is also interesting. So let's start by a bit of co-creation. So I can see, about a screen full of people right now. And what I suggest that you do, by the way, is have this on gallery view right now and squeeze my slides down. You've got that slider there, which means you can see less slides and more people. And today I think it's more important to see the people. So try and do that so that you can see as many people as possible. And I'm going to ask
We
you to
can also
co-create something with me. Yeah.
You can also see a large part of your
Oh,
computer.
that's strange. It means that Zoom is doing that weird sharing thing again. Let me try and reshare it. Thanks for letting me know. That should have stopped sharing now. It didn't. Interesting. If you're watching this on YouTube in 2025, then you'll be laughing at us, won't you? So, yeah, Eric's laughing already. Let me try the share once more. First of all, by making sure the right thing is visible. And close the sharing window. Could be playing a game with this. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for letting me know. Don't know who that was, but thank you. Much appreciated. So what we're going to ask you to do is let's play a game. Yeah, let's create something by playing a game together. I'm going to ask you to throw a ball around. I think we can do this, all of us who are here. If you want to play, switch on your camera. If you don't want to play, switch off your camera. That would be fine. And the way this works is you throw the ball by calling someone's name and throwing a ball to them. Yeah, and they catch it and they pass it to someone else. And we're going to go for speed here. Now we're going to go for speed. So let's just see what happens for about 2 minutes, okay? So I'll start with Marion.
Thank you.
Now we're going for speed. So who's it going to go to?
So it's just okay, I got it. Sorry about that. Patrick.
Fieke. Oh, you got to come off mute.
Unfortunately, we couldn't hear Fika. I wonder who she threw it to.
Sorry, Stephen. Thank you. Ximena. Unmute yourself.
Raluca again.
Anupa. Liana.
Let's pick up the speed. Let's try and get twice as fast as this. Come on.
Adan.
Everybody's got to come off mute.
I said Adan.
Okay. Yuenyen.
Afri.
Danny.
Ekmark. Ilona.
Ilonka.
Ilona.
Danny.
Again?
Again.
Eric.
Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Ezekiel.
Al.
Claudia.
Ipke. Mark.
Ofri.
Anupa.
You're mute.
Horea.
Union.
Adam.
Jane.
Camilla.
10 more throws. 9 more.
Eskiel.
Mark.
Nachiket.
Al.
Ika.
Mena.
Marcel. Was there one?
One more. Who has the ball? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. That was a good job. Excellent, excellent. So, question: did anybody not get the ball? If you didn't get the ball, give us a wave. I'm not sure. Whoa, that's interesting. Okay.
Walter and Howard. No.
Sorry about that. Can't see everyone on my screen. So if you didn't get the ball, hold your hand out now, and everyone throws a ball to you. 3, 2, 1, bombard them. Okay, that's plenty of balls for you there. Okay, so a quick question. Type this in the chat if you like to. What did you notice during this game? What did you notice during this game about yourself, about the people in the thing, and about the group? What did you notice? Just go ahead and type something in the chat. Maybe 10 more seconds. Great stuff coming in. Go ahead and read what other people are posting. Yeah, cool. So there's lots of really interesting stuff there, which we could come back to. But, you know, we heard names, we practiced names, we messed up names, we tried to link names to faces for the first time. We learned to switch our microphones on. We even did things like, I noticed I think a value of fairness in the group, of trying to see who hasn't got it yet, who hasn't got it yet. And of course with Zoom that can be complicated, especially a group this size, but well done. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to this kind of thinking later on. And I want to actually start off the session now. So, as I said before, I recommend this kind of view. Keep the slides fairly small. Make sure you can see plenty of people, and then you'll have a more fun session. I'll take this picture, by the way, out before I share this. Hi. Haven't said hello yet. Yeah, my name's Adam. My background, really quickly, I come from psychology. I went to marketing, and in marketing, I was on the end where we were deciding what kind of products get developed and so on for a company called Honda, making motorcycles. And I switched to theater about 25 years ago, and I spent 20 or more years of that purely as a professional actor, director, singer, stripper, all these things. And a few years ago, oh, by the way, and at the weekend, I like to hit my friends with sticks. Yeah, this is me. That's me in the brown there. I have the biggest stick in that picture, which is nothing at all Freudian. And a few years ago, I noticed that these were kind of the same thing. Yeah, they're all about, if you like, the handicraft, the craftspersonship of emotion. Whether you're using words to help somebody feel a certain way or figure out how they feel, whether you're using images and so on to make people want to buy something, whether you're building something with gasoline and cables and glass and steel that they want to scream down the Autobahn on, or whether you are moving people and words through space to make people want to become a regular customer, or maybe they want them to cry or whatever in your theatrical show. So all of these are kind of the handwork of emotion. And I find that quite interesting because I find it very interesting to see how people collaborate, and especially how they collaborate in certain contexts. My company is called Workplay Experience. You can forget that pretty quickly. We're involved in helping many large organizations, often in telecom, often in government, energy, businesses, and others all around the world, do pretty cool things, helping them work together in a different way, which is more collaborative, more realistic, more based on experimentation and learning rather than on PowerPoint and who has the loudest voice. Some people call that design thinking. I teach the same stuff at various schools around the world, and weirdly, they're a mix of business schools, technology schools, and design schools, which I find quite interesting how this sort of fits between those worlds. If you look me up, you're going to find a book which I co-wrote with my friends Mark Stickdorn, Marcus Hormes, and Jakob Schneider called This is Service Design Doing, and many people around the world, 305 colleagues contributed to this book, and it's now available in 4 languages, with the 5th one coming soon. And if you Google me, you'll also find this event, the Global Service Jam. If you've been a jammer at some point, please type jam in the chat, in capital letters if you like, yeah? If you've been a jammer at some point. This is the world's biggest, oh, look at all those people, collaborative design thinking event. It takes place in rooms, and today in Zoom rooms or other channels all around the world. People come together with 48 hours to develop a totally new thing, service, product, or whatever, and that happens simultaneously under a motto of doing and not talking. Of course, we talk. We try to do more than we talk, all over the world in around 140 cities. And if you want to take part in that amazing event, the next one's coming up in June. So go to globaljams.org. You get all the links at the end, by the way. Now, that's my intro, yeah? What I'd like to do now is talk about what I'm going to be looking at today, yeah? And this is how design can drive culture change in organizations, and how culture in organizations can also strongly influence our design activities within organizations. And when I say design, I don't care what you think of that as being. If you're trying to change something in a conscious way, then I consider you a designer. Changing it, continuing it, or stopping it, they're all designers' choices. So I'd like to actually ask you to do a little activity with me. I'm going to put you out into some breakout rooms for a second, random rooms with quite a small number of people. So probably there'll be 3 or 4 or something in your room, yeah? And in these rooms, I'm going to ask you to work in alphabetical order. So you take the names, your first names if you like. So Adam goes before Walter, but Danny goes before Don, yeah? And I'm going to ask you to, in this order, create something, a new thing which never existed before. If you played the game before, just sit back and enjoy it, take part, and look for things you haven't noticed before. But you're going to create a story together. You know, one word at a time. That means one of you says one word, the next person picks up on that word and adds another word, and together you might start building a sentence, and your sentences might start building a story. Grammar is not important in this, but it needs to be a real story, yeah? You can use whatever language works for your group. So it might look something like this. With 3 people in the call, we'd have the first person say once, the second person says there, the third person says was, and you go on and on like this. Now, if you can't think of a word, you can just say pass, yeah? And as I said before, grammar is not important in this one. If you want to, your story can contain some special things I'm going to tell you about in a moment. Now, that's a fairly easy task. We're good storytellers. So while you do that, I'm going to give you a second task. I want you to think about the flow of this. When is the work going smoothly and when is the work difficult? So, for example, you might use 17% of your brain, that's a totally made-up number, to observe yourselves while you're working, and see, what am I doing, what am I believing, which lets this work flow well? What am I doing, what am I believing, which makes the flow difficult, makes the story hard to tell? Okay? So, Anupa's going to drop the instructions for that into the chat in case you can't remember all that, but basically here's a reminder. You're going to be going around telling stories in alphabetical order, one word at a time. If you like, your story can contain a toothbrush and the emotion of jealousy. Okay? If you like, it can contain a toothbrush and the emotion of jealousy. Instructions are in the chat, and you've only got about 2.5 minutes, so try and keep it nice and fast like the ball throwing before. I'll see you on the other side. Making sure no one's alone in a room. We're good. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
If you're watching the recording of this, unfortunately, this is kind of the backstage stuff. There's a fair bit of this in this session. You can imagine amazing things happening in these rooms. People laughing, crying with joy, yeah, having experiences they've never had before. And you'll see that on their faces when they come back.
So, do you want to try this out here, or do you want
Let's
to just
do it, yeah, for the guys watching. So
Yeah.
who wants to start?
Yes, because I'm still woozy.
Okay, so I wanted
to
go.
Back.
Was it pack, as in
Back.
Back to
The
castle.
Where is
When-
that? Oh,
One
Mark,
word
you're
at a
up.
time, Anupa.
One word at a time, yeah.
oh,
You can
castle.
join.
Why?
Said
My
best.
Toy.
called
Robo.
kitten.
Specifically
Known.
by
The
anagram
rook.
please
Lend
Me.
7
toothbrushes.
So.
17%
Of
my
teeth.
will
Be
clean.
Okay. So I'm going to call the guys back quite quickly. There's someone in the waiting room. We can let them in as well. And I'm going to close the rooms. Thanks for that. That was fun.
Yes.
And I saw some of the effects which I expected, which are interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes you think. And it was also like, Mark, didn't you feel like it was a little bit like Joshua's, where we were creating on the go?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is
Bit of
an
improv.
element of surprise and
So-
also.
Welcome back. Thank you for that one. I hope you had fun in your rooms. I think nobody was alone in a room. I tried to check them all, but you were telling your stories, and we haven't got time to hear the stories, I'm afraid, but I hope there were some interesting ones, or beginnings of stories probably. You probably couldn't finish it. But I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Yeah. The first question's on the right-hand side of your board. I'd like you to type into the chat what you noticed that blocked the flow. What did you do or what did you believe which made this game difficult? Just the negative stuff, first of all. What blocked the flow? And we'll take a moment to look at those. Cool, maybe 10 seconds more. Thanks, Eric. Okay, fantastic. You guys are really good at this typing stuff. Okay, so that was interesting. And I've seen some stuff there which I recognize. Overthinking, one of the first things that came. Yeah? Difficulties in handovers, you couldn't hear, for example, but also needing to, for example, not wanting to appear stupid, wanting to appear clever. People talked about worrying about the grammar, although I said twice, and we had it in writing as once more, grammar is not important, but we still set rules for ourselves, don't we? It's amazing how often we do that. I see that in organizations all the time. What the big boss means as a hint or a piece of advice becomes a law further down the organization. Let's have a look at the second part of this. What helped? What helped the flow in this one? And maybe 10 seconds more. Thank you, this is fantastic. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and type some more if you like. But what I've done actually is while you were typing is I've been very, very quickly, my team of crack monkeys have been typing those into an analysis machine. I've analyzed what the main answers were that you gave. It's amazing. Actually, I'm lying. I've played this game many times before, and these are my top 9 answers that I get back on this. Yeah. What slows us down? Sticking to the vision, thinking a lot, trying to stick with your own idea, for example, yeah, trying to predict the future, being smart, following rules, even rules that we just invented. Yeah. These are the things that make this game hard. What makes it easy? What makes it easy to collaborate in this way and create something new? Letting go, just trying something, listening well, building on others' ideas. Yeah, listening well, we had the opposite of that where you couldn't hear each other, for example. Do you recognize those things there? Was that your experience as well? I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. Give me kind of a, yeah, okay. Some general positivity there and no social pressure whatsoever. Okay, so this is interesting, isn't it? Because we had a task here, which was to co-create a thing which never existed before. And that's just like being a designer or innovator or a manager in an organization. And we found that certain behavior worked well and certain behavior worked less well. Question, I call those, by the way, structure and freedom. Okay, structure and freedom are the headings I give for those. Question for you. Which one of those is mostly respected in organizations? The left side or the right side? People are pointing, but unfortunately, this Zoom turns us around, but I'm seeing a lot of people typing in, right. That's right. Yeah, sticking to the vision, thinking a lot, etc., etc. That's fine, you know. Some of my clients used to build nuclear power stations. It's really important that they follow the rules. They try to predict the future. They stick to the plan. Yeah? That's cool, but they've also built many nuclear power stations before. If they had to do something new, like, I don't know, build a power station on Mars or something, maybe sticking to the rules wouldn't have been so useful. Yeah. So what we have here is a range of different types of behavior, both of which are useful. And I think moving people between them is one of the key roles of a facilitator. When do we need to be more left side, more right side of this page? It's also leadership. When should the organization or teams in the organization stick to the vision, think a lot? When should they let go and try something? And I think it's also generally design, because in design, we are constantly moving people, helping people move between these different mindsets, if you like, as they work. Now, I'd like you to put you into a short breakout for a moment, yeah? I'll make new ones so you can see different people again. And I'm going to ask you in those rooms to have a little conversation. Anupa's going to drop the same question in the chat as well. Have a short conversation, just 3 or 4 minutes, about when does design practice, so the work of design in organizations or outside them maybe, in freelance, when does it need freedom and when does it need structure? When are those things useful? Okay? 2 or 3 minutes to talk about that. If you're new to this business, then you've always made something, you've created something before, you've helped somebody with something, so that works just as well. Ready for the rooms? The task is going into the chat just now. Anupa's dropping it in, I think.
Is it the yes, but...
Oh, sorry, this one, sorry, is not in the chat. I'll put it in myself. I missed it giving you that one. When does design need structure or freedom? Very badly typed, but it will do, yeah. I'll open the rooms right now. So I've got to copy that one in. My apologies. That was just not my fault. So what do we think, those of us who are hanging out here?
Yeah. When does design need freedom versus structure? Well, I think you need a loose structure around the whole process, and then a structure through the middle of the process, and then a lot of freedom around the middle of the process, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When you're trying to make decisions and all those kind of things, it's the double diamond.
Anupa, you were going to say something.
I feel that there is structure is important. It depends on what kind of context you start with, whether you start with freedom or whether you start with structure. There is also the question is how much of structure and how much of freedom do you need, and how much would you require to create that balance, or do you need that balance also?
Yeah.
So in some cases, structure is important because complete chaos doesn't get you anywhere, just round and round. But sometimes that kind of chaos also brings structure, and you come out with something great.
Can you think of any specific mechanisms of structure which can be useful or which can get in the way? What about a budget, for example? A fixed budget for a project. How useful is that?
Yeah. What's the difference between structure and a constraint? Because a budget is a constraint, right?
Well, I think it's also a structure, because it also says you've got a limit here. We can't go beyond that. Yeah.
I can actually, constraints, as we know, can actually be good for creativity in some, depending on how the constraint is framed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some of the best shows I improvised theater shows, long form ones that last 3 hours or so. And some of the best ones that we've done are when somebody outside the team, our manager, had to sell it to somebody, and he thought up a title on the spot and gave us that title. And we'd be like, what? This is not what, you know? And it was one famous one was three nice Swedish ladies at Castle Neuschwanstein. And I've got a team of 5 and 4 of them are men. You know, macho, beardy types, yeah?
Right.
And we had to work with that. And it ended up being a brilliant show about this, the pun works in German, about a 3-meter tall lady at Neuschwanstein. And it turned out this lady could walk on stilts, and we had a 3-meter person and the castle and so on. It was a brilliant show. But I would never have got to that point if I hadn't had that constraint of the structure given by our boss who wanted to sell something quickly. I'll send the guys a message out now.
Yeah, I think structure also comes in terms of decision making, whether it's top or lower management, and that, you know, plays a big role on freedom. So I think it's more structure, behavior. It's all within like a Venn diagram. Maybe Aura would also like to talk a little bit about her thoughts.
If they are there.
Or maybe just listen.
That's cool as well.
Yeah, so I think it's there's a big question mark about structure and freedom, because it's I mean, it comes from different angles.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can't have one without the other as well. So it's about kind of modulating between the two. Well, you can have structure and just structure, but you're not going to really get to, I think, design, right? Some point. So
the rooms are closing down. So we should see people crashing back out of warp, just like the spaceships. Welcome back. That's my favorite part. It's like people crashing out of warp in spaceships, you know, at the end of some movie or other. That's not a navy, it's just people. Spoiler, sorry. So what I'd like to do now is ask you maybe to shout out a couple of things that you thought were interesting in your conversation, if anything. Yeah, there's a question on the board still. When does design practice need freedom? When does it need structure? Or what are particular structural mechanisms which can be difficult or useful for us? I'll give you some typing music. So some structures which are interesting, you might call them constraints as well, things like budget, deadlines, pre-selection of teams, things like that. Nice point, Fika. If you give people structure, do they observe it, and should they observe it? And a really important point from Jane, cultural differences. I am lucky enough to teach pretty much all over the world, and I see very different, different between Colombia and Hong Kong, but it's also different between, for example, Finland and Sweden. Neighbors can be very different on these things. Cool, some great stuff there, and I recommend you have a look at the chat and read through some of those things. I certainly will myself. Let's move on and see what we can do with this stuff. So we talked about these things, these two sides of it. And generally speaking, I find one way to think about when do I need more structure and when do I need more freedom is the question of, have we done this before? Is this a new thing we're doing, or is it something very new? And there's a link here because these things link to some emotions quite quickly. If you're in a situation where you get scared, the deadline is coming or there's a crisis happens and so on, I bet you'll find you move towards the right-hand side of this. You try to organize things and get the ducks in a row and stop things moving around too fast, in a condition of fear, which is quite interesting because we know that if the fear comes from something being new, that's the wrong way to actually go. And you'll probably find that you're more able to let go, just try something, build and so on, when you feel in a space of trust. Yeah, so there's an emotional aspect to link to that. But what I wanted to say is that this structured side is really good for familiar problems, and that this freedom side is actually necessary for new problems. And this is kind of a no-brainer to us, I think, if we work in design or design thinking or in fields like that. But it can be very, very hard sometimes for organizations to accept, especially when they start to feel fear. So I'll call this sometimes freedom versus structure. And of course, organizations really love straight lines. Yeah, they just love them. They fit on Gantt charts. You know, they're plannable. You see where it starts. You see where it ends. You know if you're on track the whole time. And I often compare these two representations. One is the famous squiggle from Damien Newman, which is supposed to show the process of a design project from a great height. And the other one is a straight line. And if you look at them like this, then you notice sometimes that they're pretty similar. They both move down the page and they end up at the same spot. But of course, when you're in the middle of it, that squiggle doesn't look like this, it looks like this. And this is what freaks organizations often out, because they want the straight line and they get something which seems to have no beginning, no end, and no direction. The problem with working in straight lines, obviously, is you have to be right all the time. And I'm going to explain my model of design here because Anupa thought it could be useful for you guys. So that's fine if we're in a situation where the world is not changing. But let's imagine an organization and they want to do something, they want to innovate, they want to create a new product or solve a problem or whatever. This is how they usually believe they have to do it. They think. Thinking is important, especially if you have numbers. That's really cool to have numbers and think about them. Then you get, whoa, this mega idea. Yeah? And this mega idea, you validate it, usually by asking people who look a lot like you if they think your idea is a good one. And then because you've done that well, you can implement it fairly easily. And if you implement it well, then whoosh, zoom, boom. Oh, yes, you win. Awesome. Okay. Now, that can work, and I've seen it work in certain situations. But usually, it's a really risky thing to do, especially in situations where something has changed, where the world is new. Because straight lines are fine in familiar territory, and they suck in new territory. That can get you into really bad trouble if you stick to your plan while the world around you is changing. So we have this thing called design, and this is the model I mentioned for you folks. In design work, this is how I often explain it to my clients, there are activities happening, and that could just be the everyday business of an organization. It could also be something specifically design-y, like prototyping or researching something. Whatever, you're doing something, and your doing something gives you data. Usually a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. We need both of those. They're both useful. So numbers and stories and impressions and implicit and explicit things, all that wonderful stuff. Empathy is data. Then we think this data tells us this. We think it means that, and we make a model of the world based on that data. We call that insights usually in design. And that gives us an idea of, if that's the way the world works, maybe we should try this next activity. So we change our everyday business, or we do this research activity, or that prototyping activity, or whatever it is, yeah? Which sends us round and round this thing again. Now, of course, as you know, you don't go in a circle, you jump between these things the whole time. And which is why please stop saying phases in design. There are no phases in design. There are phases on Gantt charts, but in design we do what we need to do that day. Yeah? And of course you can start anywhere as it's a circle. So this kind of model is no longer freedom versus structure, it's freedom within structure. And I think that's quite an important thing to think about. Now, there's another very famous structure, which are those diamonds, yeah? I intensely dislike the double diamond model because in my experience, projects in reality are multiple streams of multiple diamonds with sort of squidgy bits in between them. But let's talk about individual diamonds. We have divergent and convergent behavior. Some folks call that yes and, additive, constructive behavior, and yes but, subtractive, selective behavior. But we diverge and converge, and that's another structure that people often find useful in explaining design. But why do we have to do all this? The thing is that organizations are evolving. If we look at the cycle of industry Schumpeter called it, I think cycle of industry 80 years ago. He said there's brain activity, there's adoption, there's routine, and there's crisis. Brain activity, adoption, routine, crisis. So a new tech comes along. Electric motors, for example. First we think about it, then we try and make it work, then we run it for a while, then it all goes wrong. Yeah, and we need the next thing. And that cycle used to be 80 years, 120 years, things like steam engines, telegraphs, and so on. But now it's months, 20 months, 2 years, 2.5 years. So we can't approach problems in the same way we did before. This is the model I use, and I think you're going to like this part. It's kind of, if you like, the main theory part of this presentation, if you like theory. And I've stolen this version of it from Lalou, but many people talk about this. And this explains how organizations are evolving in the same way that societies evolve. And the furthest I want to go back today is what you might call a red organization, an impulsive organization, like a wolf pack or a street gang. And this is run on fear, strength. If I'm in a wolf pack and I want to take on the leader of the pack and I kill her, I take over. No one's going to blame me for that. Yeah? It's entirely unplannable. You live in the moment. We think by the second, by the hour. Now that evolves in our history from maybe several tens of thousands or thousands of years ago. A few thousand years ago, we start seeing social structures, pyramidal things, yeah? Civilizations, religions, universities, militaries. They still follow this pattern. A very conformist worldview where you have a status and you don't break that status. You have hierarchies. And your vision of the world is a permanent, long-term vision. The church will never change. The eternal church, the unseen university. Now, most organizations today are in a phase which Lalou and his friends call orange, which is achievement. The paradigm of this is the engine, the motor, and all the things these organizations talk about, they're all motoring, engineering words: performance, resources, input, output, efficiency, performance indicators, controlling. These are all terms that actually come from engineering. And that's quite interesting. Yeah, the time scale of these organizations is usually quite short. It's quarterly or monthly. The next report, the next shareholder output for money for people and so on. Now, if we go beyond that to some organizations like Ben & Jerry's, maybe it's an often quoted example, but there are many others, we saw a model shifting from a machine to a family. So it's based on respect and values now, and people start to self-organize. So you might say, okay, we're going to use Agile, organize yourself in that Agile context. And a very few organizations, Patagonia is one of them, have gone a step beyond that to what Lalou calls teal. That's an interesting color, yeah, where we have a very flat, fluid network, and people are no longer self-organizing, they're now self-managing. So they decide, what system will I use, what measurements will I use, what structures and so on. And rather than values, we now have a purpose. So rather than we believe in X, we now want to achieve Y. Now this is interesting if we look at this and compare it to our previous stuff, because we have another progress here from fear to trust. In that wolf pack, it's a condition of fear for my life. Maybe in the religion, it's fear of going to hell and so on. And that moves into trust, of being able to take responsibility and organize myself more and more. Now, that freedom, that fear, is a kind of freedom. If I am a wolf in the wolf pack or a gang member, I am free to try and take over. And if I succeed, I succeed. Now, after that, we have a phase or some phases of structure and control, where I'm okay if I stay within my place or if I meet my targets, and they're measurable and fair and non-emotional. And then beyond that, we get to a new kind of freedom. This is the freedom of being able to structure myself, plan myself, choose myself what I work on maybe, or where the direction is for our organization. And this is really, really critical, because the word freedom appears at both ends of this scale. And I'd like you to imagine that you are somebody in, for example, an orange organization, so the achievement organization, and someone says to you, we should give people more freedom, then what do you think? The only freedom you know is the freedom of fear. That's linked to disorder, chaos, anarchy, in the strict sense of the word. Then we have compliance and metrics, and then we have responsibility, a different kind of freedom. So two different types of freedom here, but they're both freedom. When you've never seen freedom based on responsibility, when someone suggests freedom to you, that looks like disorder, anarchy, chaos, because that's the only kind of freedom that you've seen before in the evaluation of your organization, your personality, or your culture. I'd like you to ask yourself now, just among yourselves, just for yourself now, when does your organization, even if it's your own one, yeah, even if you're a solo, when do you use fear to get things done? When do your organization use compliance and metrics? And when is there true responsibility divulged to people? Let's put this all together. Now, we had this scale here. And I think you'll agree with me that we said that we can do better as designers, and I put service design, I call my work service design, you might call it design thinking or human-centered design, or whatever word you use. We can do better work if organizations are there, because that's where we have the freedom to do the things we need to do. To walk out of the building, to talk to a customer, to build a product, to run an advert, to test if it works, yeah? To call a provider, to talk to members of staff. That is stuff which is basic work for designers. And it really terrifies some organizations because it sounds like chaos and freedom, of course, is scary. So we're looking for behaviors which are pluralistic, respect, fairness, values, and so on, self-management, fluid, changing networks, and these things. What I'd like to do now is send you out into a final breakout room. And in that breakout room, I'll just skip this one, to think about this chart, yeah? Now, we as leaders, as designers, as facilitators, take decisions in the moment which affect how the session goes, and in the session which affect how the project goes. And if the project goes well, the culture changes, whether we want it to or not. Yeah? So how I solve a dispute, for example, in a meeting will affect how effective the meeting is, and the project will stand or fail or be influenced by that meeting, and people will learn from that project succeeding or failing, and it will change the culture. So we're always thinking about the levels above and below this, and in fact, this goes both ways. The culture influences my project, influences my session, which influences the moment. So I'd like you in the group, and Anupa, if you could put this question in, that should be in the chart, yeah? What choices can we make as designers, solo or in groups, at the moment or session or project level, that can help build a better culture for design in our organizations, that can give us freedom within structure in the organization? How can that manifest in a momentary decision that you make in a project, in a session, or even just in a conversation with somebody? So new rooms, 3 or 4 minutes for this one, and we're going to bring you back just before 10:02, and that's when I'm going to round up my presentation to you guys today, and we can switch on to a conversation. Yeah. So we have that in the chat. Can you drop it in, please?
Yes, it's already in the chat.
Okay, I don't see it. Interesting. Okay. Did you send it to somebody in particular, or is it for everybody?
No, it's for everyone. Just scroll.
You guys can see that? Okay. So I'll open up the breakout rooms, and have a conversation about that. Sorry, I can't see it in my chat. It's really weird.
Yeah, I didn't get it in the chat either.
I think you may send it.
No, it says.
Did it go to a certain individual person or to everyone?
No, to everyone. Let me just repost it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it in I'll put it in the conversations.
There you go. Typo.
And now it's arrived.
Yeah.
Now it's just like half of it. Just let me read. Yeah. No, it's really strange why it didn't.
It's Zoom being weird. It happens. So, any thoughts that we have around this?
Lots. Anupa, what do you think?
I mean, for moments, definitely I would start with inclusivity, because I think that's a basis of a lot of things, whether it's just basic, thinking, creating, decision making. I think that has a lot of power to change the way people behave in their organizations. So I think that would be definitely a choice that whether the team or the organization, or let's say the leader, makes to make their environments and teams more inclusive. So I would start with that.
So I may need to go to like 52. Is that okay? Or
Sure.
it will be
Yeah, no problem.
so 22 for Anupa.
Yeah, that'll be fine. I'm
Cool.
sure. I agree with you, Anupa. I think that actually what you said, if I understood it correctly, applies. The inclusivity and being purposeful about it, right? Like being even conscious that you want to create a certain culture from the start, and whether it's at the moment, session, or project level. Actually, I think it as a team, establishing that you have a culture, like we have a culture here, the three of us, to a certain degree, right? That you're creating that it's the safe space thing to a certain degree, but being really purposeful about doing that, and as opposed to just not even thinking about it. That's, I guess, the starting point. And I think we all know that that gets neglected a lot. So it's more, I think, the exception that people are doing that on purpose in most organizations than when it's done purposefully. So at least in my experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think then that's the question where you compare to where you were right at the end. That question comes in.
Welcome back. So while you've been out in the rooms, we've been having conversations here, so the guys who are watching the recording also see something going on. So it's worthwhile coming back later, watch the recording, and see what nonsense we 3 or 4 were talking while you guys were out in those rooms. Okay, so I'm going to leave those conversations for you, for your group. No need to share it with us now. But I've got a question for you personally as well, because sometimes those decisions are microscopic. What was your personal choice today, for example, when I asked you to play a ball game at the start of the session? Were you, I'm gonna switch my camera off, I'm gonna leave it on, I'm gonna see what people around me do, or were you immediately clear which of those choices were for you? There's no wrong choice there, but the choice that you make may tell you if you are a person who maybe prefers the structure or person who prefers the freedom side of that. We're running out of time. So I'm going to be here a bit longer afterwards for conversations if you like. Just wanted to share this with you. That link tree at the bottom, which is also the QR code, takes you to a bunch of resource links. The global jams I mentioned before, the Applied Improvisation Network, and prototyping with us at the Co-Creation School, which is where we try out new formats and stuff. It's a lot of fun there. And if you have, I'll ask you to do one more thing in the final 30 seconds of my time, which is, what one thing are you taking away from this session so far? What one thing are you taking away? And I'll give you like 30 seconds to type a very short sentence what you're taking away today. Some people are messaging me directly accidentally, so you may want to check that went out to the group and not to some particular person. And thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing, hand you back, and give yourselves now, please, a round of applause. You deserve it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Anupa. Thanks, Mark, for having me.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was it was great, and I think we all have a lot of thoughts now to either implement or to think about. So that was great. We'll be chatting more with you. I'm going to be introducing our next guest now, and I see him somewhere in the chat. Can we go to the next slide, please? Arnaud, are you here to just talk a little bit about your session?
Yes, I am.
There he is. Okay.
Yeah, so what I want to spend some time is basically creating our non-verbal dictionary for our work as designers or as service designers or design thinking. And it's really trying to bring all the pieces together that we use while we're, sorry that my lighting is really bad, but I was forced in another room today. What we can use to communicate when we're working with groups, when we are facilitating or co-creating, and is bringing all the different elements that we have at our disposal to use that. And I have some ideas and some examples, but I'm really curious to see how we can actually co-create and help us to be more efficient non-verbal communicators in this still, unfortunately, virtual world.
Thank you so much. Mark, would you like to also talk about Sylvain's jam?
Yeah, sure. So Sylvain is going to join us, and we're going to explore futures literacy, and we're in the process of designing exactly how that's going to work because he insists that you need 90 minutes to do it, but we're going to put the design constraint that it has to be in like 50 minutes. So that's going to be fun. We're going to be looking at this thing called futures literacy and future foresight and all those kinds of things that are related to looking into the future, which is really interesting for designers, I think.
And also we have a Clubhouse session coming up. So if you're on Clubhouse, please look us up and join us for this lovely conversation that's going to happen. I'm just going to pop the link into the chat for you to just add yourselves if you are on Clubhouse. And yeah, that's about it. And we can stop sharing on YouTube and go into the backstage for some more conversation with Adam and you guys.
Awesome session. Thanks, Adam. That was.
Thank you very much. I'm here. Use
great,
and abuse me. Any challenges
Thank you,
for
Adam.
me?
And we're still live. Are we?
Yeah, I'll stop the